I have to do something I don't normally like to do: make a technique video. With the rise of the Dagestani wrestlers, understanding takedowns off the cage is now more important than ever in MMA. I've seen a lot of the material that's readily available on YouTube about this topic, and I don't like it. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, but none of it's great. None of it really talks about the conceptual battles that have to be addressed. All of the videos I can find on this subject teach the same thing. Get a really high underhook, split their legs with your foot, and use head pressure to control their posture, and then attack them with your free hand. If your goal is to pin someone against the wall and strike them, this is a great strategy, and I have no notes. However, if you want to be able to take them down, this kinda sucks. The single biggest mistake that people make when wall wrestling is they assume that it's wrestling, but on a wall. It's not. All the rules change. Getting head pressure, putting in whizzers, maintaining posture, none of that matters anymore. And this can be used to your advantage by playing people's grappling instincts against them. Anyone that's used to wrestling in open space will do the wrong things the moment their back hits the wall. If you can't beat someone at the wrestling game, just change the rules. And we've even seen the importance of wall work in the highest levels of MMA, most notably with Khabib's legendary run through the lightweight division. So let's address how you should be attacking and defending against the wall if you want to win this critical battle. So let's say I want to take this guy down, and I want to use the wall to do it. I could wait until I manage to clinch up with him and then try to maneuver him towards the wall, but that's really hard. First of all, he's not going to want to put his back against the wall, and second of all, even if I do get him there, I'm not in the right position. I'm way too high and I'm way too squared up, making it nearly impossible to attack his legs without him stopping me. The easier way to get a good position is to cut him off until his back is close to the wall and then simply shoot a blast double.
Через руку. Проход, первый проход в исполнении. Force takedowns because you're thinking about the shot, and now the shot's set up from the overhand.
Now, it seems kind of silly that this would work better. I have less control over him, and there's way more open space to cover. However, when I shoot a double leg on a trained fighter, what do? They sprawl. They move backwards and they sprawl to keep you from getting a hold of their legs. When they do this, they practically put themselves on the wall. And the best part is that there's nothing else they can do. If they don't sprawl, I'll just take them down with a normal double leg. But what if they knee you in the head? Go through professional MMA fights and tally up how often people get meaningfully kneed in the head when throwing a takedown. Now, compare that number to the number of times it doesn't happen. Masvidal knocking out Ben Askren was entertaining because it was the MMA equivalent of winning the lottery. Wrestlers are, by and large, not afraid of getting kneed. They're afraid of getting sprawled on. When my opponent's back is near the cage, takedowns are surprisingly low risk. Now, when I do get them on the cage, I stay low. I usually like to have my head at their hip or even waist level. There are all sorts of frames that someone can use to fight off the wall, but only if my head is high. Remember, he can't sprawl on me because the wall is in the way. So having my head too low or my body too horizontal isn't really a problem anymore. I should be more concerned about being able to keep my opponent on the wall. To do this, I put my head on one side of their body and my legs on the other side. This allows me to prevent them from moving out to either side while I work for a takedown. If either side is too shallow, my opponent will be able to escape towards that side. Even though I'm very bent over here, getting hit with a knee strike is not really a concern. First of all, my head should be tight to his hip, preventing him from kneeing my face. And I should be putting in pressure with my shoulder. So any attempt to knee my body is going to make them lose balance or give me a takedown. And I need to be careful not to put my hips too high, or I set my opponent up for a beautiful hip throw. If my hips stay low, I'm safe. If my hips go higher than my opponent's hips, I'm about to hit the ground.
Be patient. Again, looking for that guillotine.
And now we see him using those great grappling skills in reverse.
Once I have a stable position, I'm looking to do one of three things to get a takedown. I either want a double leg, an ankle pick, or I want to be able to lock my hands. To get a double leg, I just grab both of his legs, bounce off the wall, fling my arms straight back, and basically dolphin dive my shoulder into the ground. I don't want to drive to the side because he'll be able to use friction between his body and the wall to resist. If I do the double leg correctly, I should land in either top guard or top half guard. The double leg is most useful when my opponent's hips are facing me and he hasn't taken a proper running stance, which we will get to later in the video. To get the ankle pick, I perform an additional level change before grabbing the ankle that I'm facing and yanking it directly away from the wall as if I'm trying to start a lawnmower. I can also headbutt their inside thigh to keep their leg pinned in place while I attack the ankle. However, I need to make sure that I keep my outside arm in place. If I commit both arms to the ankle pick, they'll circle to my back. Once I have the ankle, I drag their leg away from the wall to ensure that they completely go to the ground. This ankle pick will likely land me in top guard, and it has the advantage of being one of the fastest takedown options from this position. When clasping my hands, I can either do so around my opponent's body or around his inside leg. Because my posture is so much lower than his, locking my hands will allow me to lift him up, either with a body lock lift or with a single leg lift, both of which will likely be followed by a foot sweep. If I can't lift him, I can use my locked hands to go for reaps, throws, or a basic single leg. Which takedown I choose will simply depend on how I'm able to lock my hands and which way my opponent has committed his weight. One of the common mistakes when transitioning to the single leg is to turn the corner out to that side. If I do that, my head will no longer be keeping my opponent on the wall and he'll be able to step out and face me. In open space, the answer would be to either keep turning the corner faster than him to go for his back or to run the pipe. However, I can't keep turning the corner because I'll hit the wall, and I can't run the pipe because he'll hit the wall. If you want to commit to the single leg, just don't turn the corner. Pulling it straight out and running the pipe immediately is easier and less risky. And the takedowns I've shown are by no means an exhaustive list. There are a lot of potential takedown opportunities from this position, and virtually all of them can work. However, you can be very successful with less than a half dozen of them, largely because this position is so dominant for getting takedowns. Now, what a lot of people will tell you to do is very different. I've seen a lot of tutorials saying to put your head higher to put pressure into his jaw and to split his legs with yours. This is a great thing to do if you're looking to keep them on the wall and strike them, because you can punch them with your free hand and hit them with your rear knee. However, if you're looking for a takedown, this is not ideal. Splitting their legs with your forward leg makes grabbing their outside leg more difficult and forces you to stand up too straight to properly attack their inside leg. You can put your leg to the inside when you're transitioning to a lift or an inside reap, but you don't want to keep your leg inside, as it ruins your offense. And attempting to fight with head pressure is going to risk them getting a deep underhook that could prevent you from changing levels effectively, or even allow them to reverse you. Plus, you're not vulnerable to all sorts of frames off your head and chest when you're low. As long as my posture stays down, their underhook is going to be too shallow to matter, and any attempt to dig their underhook deeper is going to square them up with me and give me a double leg. If I want to hit them, my posture is going to be high. If I want to take them down, my posture should be low. One of the best examples of this is actually in one of Icy Mike's videos, where he has Cliff pinning someone against the wall. Cliff did have his head up and his leg in the center. However, as soon as Mike told him to kick it into high gear, his hips moved out, his head lowered, and he grabbed the legs.
Now, Cliff, keep him there for real. Yeah. Look, he's creating it.
I'm picking on Icy Mike's videos, but that's because I know him. Everyone else has the exact same advice, and they're all somehow wrong. So I've already contradicted a lot of tutorials you may have seen, but I haven't said anything outright heretical. But that's because wall wrestling offense is easy. The defense is where things get a little weirder, which is why this section of the video is noticeably longer. If someone manages to put me against the wall, the first thing I need to do is take a running stance in the same direction that they are facing. If I attempt to face him, I'll get taken down immediately. This is because of how he's able to grab my far side leg. When I face away from him, my knee is a couple inches further away, forcing him to reach farther, When he pulls on my leg, it causes the leg to straighten, which just stomps it into the ground even harder, adding friction and forcing him to essentially lift me. If I make the mistake of turning towards him, my knee is easier to reach, and pulling it causes my leg to bend. If I turn towards someone that knows how to wall wrestle, I get taken down instantly. Plus, if I get taken down in a running stance, I can post my hands to quad pod. If I'm facing my opponent, I hit my butt. After getting my running stance, the first thing I need to do is use my outside hands to slow down his free hand. If his free hand is left unchecked, he could ankle pick me almost instantly. I don't need to establish a great wrist control, I just need to kind of get in his way in order to buy time for my next line of defense. Usually if you just shoot your hand down towards your ankle and smack his arm out of the way, that works. Now, one of the most common things that virtually everyone is going to do here is put in a whizzer. But everyone else is wrong. In open space, not putting in a whizzer is going to allow my opponent to easily circle towards my back. However, against a wall, they can't get to my back. If they try, I can just use the wall to peel them off and then escape through the opening they just gave me. Even if they do manage to control my back, the fact that they can now only throw me or put in a hook on a single side makes the position significantly less threatening. The other thing that a whizzer is useful for is to pull your opponent upright so that they can't reach your legs. When someone's head is high, this can prevent them from changing levels by locking them into an upright stance. But when their head is already down, pulling them upright is really difficult because I end up having to hammer curl their entire body weight. Now, if they tried to lean like this in open space, a simple sprawl would crush their face and give me a top position. But against the cage, I can't sprawl on them, meaning that I can be cranking on a whizzer with all my might, and they might still be able to ankle pick me. A whizzer could still be useful by using it to reinforce a frame on someone's face, but the only way I would be able to get this is if their head is already high. In open space or against a higher clinch, a whizzer is an extremely vital positioning tool. But against the wall with a bent over opponent, it just doesn't do anything. So instead of using a whizzer, I can put this arm to much better use by putting in a reverse side crossface and grabbing their tricep. Not only does this allow me to start to push their head away, but it also allows me to actually get them away from my legs. By the way, props to Zahabi for being the only other person I can find that teaches this move. The easiest way to get this is by putting my hand in between my opponent's neck and my tummy and punching downwards before grabbing their tricep. However, my opponent might be fighting this by squeezing their head very tightly against my body. To counter this, I can either move my arm past their head and push their head away with my elbow, or I can use my other hand to peel them off my body just long enough to get my other arm in there. Using my other hand to peel their head off works really well, but I can't over-rely on it because I often need that hand to simultaneously engage his free arm to prevent him from getting that quick ankle pick. Once I have that reverse side crossface with the tricep grab, I want to avoid pulling up. Instead, I want to push away and stick out my butt in the opposite direction. What I'm trying to do is prevent him from clasping his hands around my leg or waist. By bending over and pushing out, I've moved his hands further apart. Obviously, this move would never work in open space because it completely exposes my back. But against the cage, it's not a problem. The true battle that I need to win is hand fighting. If I'm able to control my opponent's hands, I can escape. If I can't control their hands, I'll get taken down. However, I don't need to control both of their hands, just one of them. And it's much easier to control the arm that I'm already facing. To do this, I can do one of two things. The first option is to reinforce my other hand by putting in another crossface and tricep grab. This will further limit the mobility of their arm and open up an opportunity for a reversal. Once I've created adequate space, I can shift my hips to the opposite side and attempt to turn into my opponent. As I switch my hips, it should push my opponent's body back and up, forcing their controlled arm slightly higher. The moment that their elbow is above my outside elbow, I can shoot in an underhook and use it to reverse the position, ending up pretty much exactly where we started, but with me on offense. The other option from the reverse crossface is to instead use my free hand to grab their wrist, giving me a solid 2-on-1. I can then use this grip to pull their arm up and push it out, creating an opening for me to escape through. Then I simply spin out and reset at distance. However, if your opponent is particularly slow or you're super awesome, your grip also allows you to transition directly into an arm drag, allowing you to shoot in. You can actually see one of these moves play out in the third round of Khabib versus McGregor. Throughout the round, Khabib managed to trap McGregor against the fence numerous times. However, McGregor continuously pummeled for that tricep control, and Khabib was unable to get a single takedown and ended up losing a round for the first time in his entire career.
And you see how Conor's collecting the left arm of Khabib. That stops him from being able to connect his hand. If you can't lock your hands together, you can't finish the takedown.
McGregor used the 2-on-1 to make space to turn out and throw a knee before getting separation. However, in the fourth round, Khabib again pushed McGregor against the fence, and McGregor made the mistake of putting in an overhook with Khabib's posture already down. This resulted in him being taken down almost immediately and then eventually submitted. If you want an entirely different defense, look at Alexander Volkanovski's strategy against Makhachev. Volkanovski repeatedly exposed his back in order to fully focus on the hand fight. To use this strategy, I want to post my head on the cage and grab both of my opponent's wrists. If I manage to get their wrists before they can establish a grip, that's great. If not, I want to throw my hips backwards while pulling his hands away from my hips. This is to create the slack necessary to separate their grip. In open space, bending over this far would result in my opponent knocking me forward and forcing me to post my hands so I don't face plant on the mat, therefore ruining my wrist control. However, here I can simply lean my head on the cage to prevent myself from being pushed forward. Once I've created enough space, I should be able to simply unhook my opponent's grip by pushing their hands together and then pulling one of them up and the other one down. As you get used to this motion, it gets smoother. Once I've separated their hands, I want to choose the hand that's the furthest away from their hips and put that hand into my back pocket before spinning out to that side and resetting at distance. If they're already centered directly behind me, I could potentially exit to either side. While Volkanovski wasn't able to use this strategy to escape the wall with any sort of consistency, he was able to use the battle for wrist control to make it much harder for Makhachev to take him down. After having experimented with this a little bit, I don't think that the strategy is as good as the reverse crossface defense. However, it can be very useful in situations where my opponent already has my back in open space. Retreating towards the wall can allow me to begin fighting their grips from a more stable position with the wall to lean on. The really important concepts to understand about cage wrestling defense is that you need to win the hand fight to keep them from attacking your legs, and that you need to learn to create openings with which to get off the cage. The traditional strategies of sprawling, getting low, and protecting your back basically stop mattering, because they're either made impossible or unnecessary through the use of the wall. The sooner you can adapt to the new and wondrous world of cage wrestling, the sooner you'll stop being dumped on your butt and smashed. Now, remember that this video is not a detailed or exhaustive game plan of cage wrestling. This is just a very brief introduction to a few decent tactics that can teach you about the basic concepts and fundamental battles in cage wrestling, and how it differs from wrestling in open space. If you want to learn more about how to use the cage to wrestle effectively, watch fighters like Usman, Covington, and especially the Dagestani wrestlers like Khabib and Islam. Basically, anyone that's trained under Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov. Finding a gym that practices wall work is really hard, and finding one that practices it well is downright impossible. But like it or not, this is the direction that the MMA meta seems to be moving towards. So either get good or get beat. And just so you guys can see some examples, we're actually going to do a few rounds where we use the moves in this video. He's going to shoot in on me, and then we're going to go live. Go for it. Boom. So I get my running stance. I immediately put in my reverse crossface. He tries to go for that ankle pick, but I managed to get my arm in the way just in time. Then I clear a path for myself, do an arm drag, and then I shoot in and take him down. Go for it. So he shoots in, I check that arm going for the ankle pick faster, get my reverse crossface. I get out, and then I reverse the position, which is pretty much textbook the first method of defense I showed. He's got his legs nice and wide. We are facing the same direction, so I am having trouble, but he's got the wrong crossface on, so we end up going back and forth. I managed to grip around his leg, but I circle way too far and almost let him off the wall before I finally come back. He ends up facing the wrong direction for a second, and I immediately take him down. He shoots in. I check that hand immediately. I don't give him a chance. I actually lose the grip with my other hand, but I come in and pummel for an underhook, and I'm now off the wall. I let him go again. He comes in. I immediately put my hand in there for the reverse crossface. He actually lets up pressure on the shoulder, which lets me dip below him, giving me an underhook. I pummel for a second underhook, and I reverse the position. He puts in his reverse crossface, and he actually uses that tricep grab to force me to turn that corner and gets himself off that wall. I force him back on the wall. I miss that trip, but I shoot back in immediately. That's the good thing about the wall. You can just keep shooting in. He gets the reverse crossface. He spins out, but he didn't adequately control my wrist, so I'm able to just put an underhook in there and not quite give him the position he wants, but he did manage to spin out and partially reverse it. Here, he's got his shoulder too high, so we're shoulder against shoulder. If he did a quick level change here, he would be in on my legs. But I'm currently using my shoulders to block his shoulders. I've got my reverse crossface, and I get out.
Let's get.
Editing this one is going to be a long process.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.